In life, we come across opinions all the time. And you have to agree or disagree, but do it in a way that looks sophisticated and doesn't offend people, or makes you end up looking like a people pleaser. Let's talk all about how we can agree and disagree correctly in English. Before that, hi, I'm Ajit from Capshine. Capshine is a revolutionary learner together English fluency program. And with Capshine, learning English is easy, quick, fun, affordable, and effective. And we promise a whole new you in 6 months or less. So, what do you mean by agree and disagree? Well, in life, we often come across situations where we have to express our agreement or disagreement to things that we hear, opinions that we come across. For example, I feel hard work is the key to success, and you may agree with it saying, yes, I agree. On the other hand, someone might say money is more important than knowledge, for which you might say, but I disagree with you. Some examples of agreeing and disagreeing. Let's look at these more in depth and look at agreeing to start with. When you agree, you usually use a set of phrases. We're going to look at what these phrases are and see them in context. You could say things like absolutely, definitely, of course, and all of these are phrases of agreement. You could also use I also think so or I also think that. A great phrase to show your agreement with something that is said. You could also say that you completely agree with someone. I completely agree with you. Hey John, what you said, I completely agree with. Very useful phrase when it comes to agreeing with something. You could also say, that's so true. Or informally, you could say, right? ? This is usually used to show that you agree with what they're trying to say. You could also, in a formal setting, say you have a point there to agree with someone. Let's look at some examples. Let's say Roma tells you, we need to study more to score well in our exam. And you want to agree to this. How would you do that? Well, you'd say, of course, we need to put in more effort to score well. So you're agreeing, you're also adding your own opinion on top of that and showing that agreement by using the phrase, of course. Nina says we should count our blessings instead of complaining about our problems. You want to agree with this. For example, you could say, I also think so. Notice how these phrases are used in context to agree with what the other people said. Let's look at some more examples. Jenny says, virtual books can never replace the feeling of holding a printed book in your hand. And Divya could respond by saying, that's so true. Or another way to respond is with the very colloquial, right? And this is usually used in text. More exclamation makes it less formal. It's not necessarily grammatically correct, but in text format, the right with a question mark as a response to an opinion you agree is very commonly used these days to show agreement. John says, helping others always makes me feel good. And Nia agrees to this. She says, you have a point there, helping others makes me feel good too. Notice how it doesn't just stop with the agreement, but it adds on to that with a conversation point. What about disagreeing? If you want to disagree with someone, just as with agreeing, there are many phrases you could use to disagree in a way that, doesn't make you disagreeable, where people will not hate you for saying that you don't agree with them. You could say things like, I don't think so. You could say, I take a different view. I think otherwise, I beg to differ, or that's not always true. All of these are ways to disagree with what someone says. For example, John could say, vanilla ice cream is the best. Nia could disagree with this, and she could say, I don't think so. I think butterscotch is. Or rather, I like butterscotch. Either words. Roma could say, after a certain age, there is no point in learning new things. And Rohit could have a very strong opposition to this. But instead of saying, no, you're wrong, he could say, I take a different view. In fact, I feel age shouldn't be a criteria to learn anything new in life. See how Rohit doesn't just disagree, but he is qualifying what he's disagreeing with. He's saying, I disagree because, and shows to what extent he disagrees and why he disagrees. This is a respectful way of disagreeing with what people say. Again, instead of saying, no, you're wrong, or I think you don't know what you're talking about, these are not great ways to disagree because they end conversations and they prevent people from actually developing bond or rapport. We don't want that. Let's look at what Jenny says. Exercise is the best way to maintain your weight. And while she might be right, there might be some people who think otherwise. Divya, however, thinks that's not always true. You also need to eat a healthy diet. Notice how she doesn't just say that she is wrong. She says you're right, but not always. And that's the key here. Usually in life, you don't necessarily disagree with what someone says 100%. You disagree with a portion of it, or you disagree to the extent of it. And it's important to show that, otherwise people might feel offended. And you don't want to disagree in a way where you say, no, you are stupid, you are wrong. Notice how I'm disagreeing with what opinion they have, and I'm making it clear I'm not disagreeing with them as a person. I'm not saying they are wrong as a person or they are bad or incorrect as a person. That is important to understand and remember when disagreeing with people. Nina says, celebrities lead an easy life. And Naveen might have a different view. He says, I beg to differ. They have their own share of problems. And you could, of course, leads to more conversations. Nina would say, what kind? I can't think of any. And Naveen would go ahead and elaborate on that and say, you know what? They have to worry about this, they have to worry about that. And that leads to a healthy conversation as opposed to people just bombarding other people with their opinions. What if you sort of agree with what they say? People say something, you agree with them, but not completely. You're not really disagreeing with them either, you partially agree. Let's look at some situations before which some phrases we could use. I see your point, but, so the use of a but, a conjunction, shows that there is a sort of a twist in that phrase. I kind of agree with you, but you make a good point, but I agree with you to an extent. However, all these conjunctions help show that there is another layer to your opinion. Try using these phrases in your conversations. See how people respond differently when you use the right phrases and conversation points, and instead of disagreeing with them as a person or being rude to them about having an opinion that you don't agree with, use these phrases to have a more in-depth conversation and build on that. To know more, make sure you check out the free trial to experience all of Capshine's services. You can do this by going to capshine.com or downloading the app from the Play Store. Thanks for watching.